Brendan and Christine Banfield were college sweethearts who married and started a family together. A new job brought them to Virginia. A new home promised a fresh start. Then everything collapsed. An affair with the family's young au pair, Juliana Perez Magalis. A catfish scheme involving a stranger, Joseph Ryan. By the end of one tragic day on February 2nd, 2023, Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan were dead, and Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalis would be charged with their murders. This is a story of betrayal, deception, and a crime that shocked a community and captured national attention. This is Murder Vault Chronicles. This is the story of Brendan Banfield. Brendan Banfield was born and raised on Long Island, New York. From an early age, his life followed a path shaped by ambition and discipline. Those who knew him described him as focused. At age 18, Brendan left New York to attend Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. It was there, during his freshman year, that he met Christine Benson. Christine was also beginning her adult life. Their relationship formed at a moment when everything still felt open and undecided. They were young, building dreams together and growing. Their bond continued through college and into adulthood. They were married on Saturday, June 12, 2010, and in 2018, welcomed their only child, a daughter named Valerie Ava. They also started a math tutoring center business and built a life that appeared stable and deeply rooted in New York. Christine pursued a demanding and compassionate profession. She worked as a pediatric intensive care unit nurse, caring for critically ill children and supporting families through their most frightening moments. Her work required emotional strength, patience, and devotion. Those close to her described her as nurturing and resilient. Brendan's career took him into federal service with the Internal Revenue Service, where he worked in its Criminal Investigation Division. After Brendan's promotion to special agent, the family sold their business and relocated to Virginia as part of his advancement within the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They settled into a suburban neighborhood and continued what appeared to be a carefully built life. Brendan worked in federal law enforcement. Christine balanced motherhood with the emotional weight of her work in pediatric intensive care. To neighbors, they seemed like a couple who had grown up together and stayed together. But behind that image, something began to fracture. As the demands of work and parenting increased, the Banfields decided to bring in help to care for their young daughter. They hired an au pair. Her name was Juliana Perez Magalis. Juliana was 22 and had traveled from Brazil to the United States in search of opportunity. Like many au pairs, she lived with the family, cared for their child, and experienced a new culture. She moved into the Banfield home and quickly became part of their family. At first, the relationship was professional, but according to court testimony, that professionalism did not last. Brendan and Juliana began an illicit affair. Weeks into the affair, prosecutors say Brendan and Juliana began concocting a sinister plan to kill Christine so they could be together. They turned to a sexual fetish website and created a fake profile using Christine's photograph and identity. Through this account, they contacted and catfished Joseph Ryan and suggested a rape fantasy scenario inside the Banfield home. Joseph Ryan lived in Washington, D.C. He was quiet and lived an isolated life. To him, the messages seemed like an invitation. To prosecutors, it was bait. The messages were explicit and reassuring. They encouraged Joseph to come to the house and gave no warning of danger. Joseph believed he was meeting a willing partner. He did not know he was stepping into someone else's sinister plans. On February 2nd, 2023, the day of the murders, Joseph Ryan followed the instructions he had been given and arrived at the Banfield home believing Christine Banfield had invited him over for sex. Christine had no idea what was unfolding inside her own home. Her 5-year-old daughter, Valerie Ava, was downstairs in the basement at the time. Christine believed a stranger had broken into the house and was attempting to assault her. According to prosecutors, Joseph's presence served a darker purpose. They argued he was meant to appear as an intruder, a stranger whose arrival could explain Christine's death and redirect suspicion away from Brendan and Juliana. Joseph was not only a victim, he was a decoy. What unfolded inside the Banfield marital bedroom, prosecutors later stated, was heinous. Christine Banfield was stabbed 7 times in the neck and died from her injuries. Joseph Ryan was attacked, shot, and killed by both Brendan and Juliana. After committing the brutal murders, Brendan and Juliana called 911 and claimed they had returned home to find Joseph Ryan attacking Christine and that Brendan shot him in self-defense. At first, the scene appeared to be a home invasion gone wrong, but investigators found inconsistencies. There was no sign of forced entry. The digital trail led back to the fake online profile, and Joseph Ryan's presence in the house did not match the physical evidence found there. A few months after the killings, Brendan Banfield moved Juliana into the marital bedroom, the same room where the murders took place and where he had once lived with his wife, Christine. In October 2023, Juliana was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and use of a firearm in the commission of a felony in connection with the fatal shooting of Joseph Ryan. Brendan was eventually charged in September 2024 with 2 counts of aggravated murder for the killings of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Joseph Ryan. He was also charged with the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony and child endangerment because his 4-year-old daughter was in the home during the murders. Weeks before her trial was set to begin, Juliana Perez-Magalis pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter for her role in the death of Joseph Ryan. Under her plea agreement, she received time served in exchange for testifying against her former employer and lover, Brendan Banfield. Prosecutors strategically built their case against Brendan Banfield. They argued that Brendan and Juliana worked together to lure Ryan to the house and make him appear responsible for Christine's death. They stated Brendan's motive was rooted in his love and his desire to begin a new life with Juliana. Inside the courtroom, jurors listened to weeks of testimony about secret relationships, digital messages, and conflicting stories. They were asked to decide whether this was a crime of chaos or a crime of calculation. When the verdict was finally read, the room fell silent. Brendan Banfield was found guilty on February 2, 2026, for killing both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. He was also found guilty of the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony and guilty of child endangerment. A life once built on law and order was replaced by one defined by conviction. In the digital age, tragedy can begin not with a knock at the door, but with a username and a message that says, "Come over." What happened in that house did not begin with violence. It began with people who believed they could rewrite their lives without consequence. And it ended with a story no one could escape. Christine spent her days caring for critically ill children and comforting parents during their darkest hours. She was known for her compassion and strength. At work, she faced tragedy every day, yet she returned home believing her own family was safe. That contrast between the life she protected and the life that was taken from her became one of the most heartbreaking elements of this case. Joseph Ryan was not a criminal mastermind. He believed he was answering a private invitation, not walking into danger. In the end, he became part of a story he never agreed to be in, remembered not for who he was, but for how he was used. This has been Murder Vault Chronicles. Please like and subscribe to the channel.